On Good Friday, we set up a tomb in the middle of the church, and there's a shroud of Christ being anointed. Like it's the descent of the cross icon. Joseph of Arimathea and Nicodemus and the women and John are there, and the priest processes with this shroud. We have a big procession outside with candles, and we're singing laments, and the shroud's put on the tomb on Good Friday. And then he stays there. We keep vigil at the tomb in the church. And then on Holy Saturday, the priest, again, he takes the shroud over himself, and we have another procession. Well, this is the Harrowing of Hades. And then when Easter comes, when Pascha comes, this shroud is put onto the altar where it stays until Ascension. And in place of it on this tomb, which is not covered with black anymore, it's covered with a white cloth and surrounded by flowers, is the Harrowing of Hell icon, the resurrection icon. And every time I kiss that icon, because we kiss our icons when we come into the chapel, the prayer is, harrow me like you harrowed Hades. There's a sermon by Epiphanius, who's 4th century. It's in the Roman Breviary, but in very brief. It's a very long sermon, and it's absolutely worth reading. It's for Holy Saturday. And he talks about how the souls in Hades are waiting, and they hear him coming. But in the furthest, darkest cell is Adam, because it was the first cell. And unlike all the others, I can't even talk about it without crying, he hears him, and he knows it's him because he heard him walking in the garden. He knows his footstep. And the Lord goes into that furthest, darkest cell, and he brings Adam back to the garden. And so all of our prayers surrounding Holy Saturday and Good Friday are taken from this homily. All of our Paschal prayers that we pray every Saturday night and Sunday morning are taken from this homily. And so this imagery is really like, we're steeped in it as Eastern monastics, and it makes you realize that in a lot of ways you're the tomb, and also you're the prison, and he wants to give you back yourself as a garden. When I was a Wesleyan, we did nothing with Holy Saturday. We would have a Good Friday service sometimes, maybe, depending on what church we were at. And then we would have a sunrise service on Sunday. And it was an idea that like Easter's good, but Holy Saturday was like a day of preparation for Easter. It was like a non-day. Like Christ dies on Good Friday, he rises on Sunday, but the idea of him, there was no importance to Holy Saturday. Whereas like, as far as Judaism goes, Christ is resting in the tomb. Like God rested in creation on the 7th day. Christ is resting in the tomb. He's completing his work. So he's going into Hades. Our redemption is actually being effected on Holy Saturday, which is why the church wants to protect us as a day of fasting, of silence, of prayer, of like entering into the mystery of a God who's so humble he dies, and yet he brings us out of our own death into his life. And so Easter felt like this kind of disconnected thing, which I couldn't have an appropriate emotional response to because I didn't go through the harrowing of Good Friday. Like now on Good Friday, I just feel completely lacerated because we read every passion narrative in the chapel multiple times. And like, you're so steeped in the deepest encounter with evil you can ever have is Holy Friday, when God is slain by those he creates. And not having experienced that, and then not having this emptiness of Holy Saturday, you couldn't fully enter into the joy of Easter because it's the fasting that prepares for the celebration, because that's like bringing you into communion. The asceticism is all putting you in touch with the mysteries beyond it. Like it's functional. It's not an end in itself. In the end is to be in union with God, which means you have to live his story with him. You have to live from the cross to the empty tomb.